Welcome to this quick tutorial on how to get the most out of your coffee. In this video, I'm going to go over each one of these methods. The vast majority of people are going to land right here, either a coffee maker or a French press. Most of you aren't going to bother learning how to use a V60, a Chemex, or there's quite a few people that might use the Moka Pot. The specialty coffee world has really moved away from the chorreador and more toward a Chemex or a Vandola. This Chemex is very similar to a Vandola. I don't have a Vandola yet, but it is on the shopping list. All right, so each one of these methods is going to have a different recommendation for the ratio and the grind size. If you have a grinder, great. If you don't have a grinder, that's okay. Just use whatever grind size your coffee is. All right, so the first thing you are going to want to do when you're ready to up your coffee game is get used to using a kitchen scale. These things are pretty cheap. They can be found at a lot of stores. Any kitchen stores will typically have them. Elise has them very cheap, and they're just fine. The reason why, the biggest impact on the flavor and the strength of your coffee is going to be the ratio of coffee to water. And the kitchen scale takes all the guesswork out of what is a scoop. A lot of coffee manufacturers will recommend so many scoops per cup. Well, let's just take all that guesswork out, and you can get some consistency and reliability by knowing exactly how many grams of water you're using and how many grams of coffee you're using, rather than guessing which scoop to use, how a heaping scoop, a level scoop. All of those things change the variables too much. Many people confuse the strength of the coffee with the roast of the coffee. A lot of people think that a darker roast coffee is going to be a stronger coffee. But the strength is determined by the ratio of the amount of coffee you're using to the amount of water you're using. And so if you want a stronger coffee, don't try and look for a darker roast. Just increase the ratio. More coffee to less water will make your coffee stronger. All right, so most people are going to be using some sort of drip coffee machine to make their coffee. This is a Moka Master, and this is what basically the specialty coffee world has accepted as one of the best drip coffee makers out there. I can attest this one has lasted me 15 years. I mean, I bought this thing, I think, 10 or 15 years ago. It's still going as long as you're willing to descale the machine, which it looks like it's time for me to do right now, and get that buildup out of there. These machines will last a long time. The Oster works just fine. There's just a couple of recommendations that I would have if you're going to use this machine. First of all, a lot of these drip machines come with some sort of reusable filter basket that goes inside of your coffee basket. My recommendation is to throw these out. And instead, let's use a paper filter. These things, just like the chorreador, tend to fill up with oils, and they slow down the brew time. Paper filters are just way more consistent, and you'll get a better, cleaner, tastier cup out of it. And the paper filter goes directly inside of the basket. Never put the paper filter inside of this other basket and put them both in. That's why I really recommend, if your machine comes with one of these, just throw it away and go with the paper filter. Okay, so that goes in there like that, and the only other recommendation that I have is avoid using the hot plate. If you plan to drink your coffee all morning, I would, after the brew is finished, pull it out of the carafe and put it into some sort of thermos, like a larger coffee carafe if you have something like this, or a larger one of these thermoses, and it will stay warm all morning. The problem with these hot plates is that they tend to cook the coffee and give like a burnt taste, especially if it's more than a half an hour or so. So the Ninja, this one is sold at PriceSmart here in Costa Rica, and it is an incredible machine. It's right on par with the Moka Master, and to be honest, it costs a third of the amount that this Moka Master costs. Both the Ninja and the Moka Master use a number 4 cone filter. So this is the filter basket for the Moka Master, and I think these Ninjas come with a reusable filter basket as well, and my recommendation again is to just throw it away and use a number 4 cone filter. So that goes directly into the water basket there, and you put your coffee into that. And I'm thoroughly impressed with this machine. All right, so when you're making coffee in a coffee maker, I recommend a 1 to 16.6 ratio, meaning 1 gram of coffee to 16.6 milliliters or grams of water. Milliliters and grams are interchangeable in this instance. So the first thing you need to know is how much water you're going to use. In this case, in the Oster, this is a 1.8 liter coffee machine, and I know that because I Googled it. But another way to find out is just to take your carafe, put it on your kitchen scale, zero it out, and then fill it up to the amount of water that you're going to use. In this case, let's pretend we fill it up to 12, put it back on there, and it should come out to, in this case, 1.8 liters or 1,800 grams. So now that we know how much water you're going to use, in this case, let's pretend we're going to make a full pot. Let's do the math and divide out 1,800 divided by 16.6. And that is what's going to tell you how much coffee to use. Now, I really recommend using a kitchen scale, and this is just an extreme example of why. These are both 25 grams of coffee. This is a dark roast and this is a light roast, but you can see that the density is very, very different. And now this is an extreme example, but you can see how much it actually varies based on the coffee itself. But weighing it out in a kitchen scale takes all of that guesswork out, as opposed to, you know, how many scoops is this, or what type of scoop you're using, or whatever it is. It can actually impact the final cup a lot. Okay, so then we're going to make a full pot with the Oster. We're going to measure out 108 grams of coffee. So find your receptacle or whatever you're going to use to measure your coffee in, zero out your scale, and then start weighing out 108 grams. All right, there you go. So this is 108 grams of coffee. If you have a grinder, great, shoot for a medium grind. If you don't have a grinder, that's just fine, but you can just put your ground coffee right into your receptacle and measure it that way. All right, happy brewing. All right, so apart from the drip coffee maker, probably the next most popular coffee maker out there is going to be the French press. If you're using the French press, I recommend a 1 to 15 ratio. You can play around with it from there all the way down to a 1 to 13 ratio, all the way up to a 1 to 17 ratio. That's probably going to be the range that hits most people's flavor profiles. But the first thing that you need to know is how big is your French press, because in order to calculate that ratio, we need to know how much water fits in here in order to calculate how many grams of coffee to use. All right, so you're going to want to just fill it up to about 3/4 of the way up there, because you need to account for, you need to leave space for both the plunger and the coffee. And the coffee is going to take up about that much down at the bottom. The plunger is going to take up about that much on the top. So you can put your plunger in and you can kind of guess about how much coffee you're going to need to put in there, and then fill your water up to that mark so that we can figure out what size French press you have. Okay, so put your French press on the scale, zero out your scale, because we don't want to weigh the glass, we want to weigh the water. All right, so that looks about right to me. I went to about right there. I've got, you know, a gap for the press itself, for the plunger, and then a little gap for the coffee. I'm going to weigh how much water is in there. 630, so I'm just going to go with 650. 650 is a nice number. I think that'll be enough I think there'll be enough space in there. All right, so we just used that water for measuring. I dumped it out. Now we're ready to do the math. So this French press holds 650 grams of water, and I'm going to use a 1 to 15 ratio. So we'll take 650 divided by 15 equals 43 grams of coffee. So we're ready to measure our coffee. Grab a bowl or something to measure your coffee in, zero out the scale, and measure 43 grams of coffee or whatever your calculation comes out to be. Okay, there's 43 grams. If you have a grinder, great. If you don't, no worries. If you have a grinder, grind it to a coarser grind than you normally would anything else. All right, so you've got your French press, you've got your 43 grams of coffee. The next thing, just put your entire 43 grams or whatever the amount, however the math comes out for you, into your French press, and then zero out your scale. All right, put the coffee down in there at the bottom. So your scale should say 0 at this point, and now you're ready to pour your hot water in. One of these is just fine, just take it right off the boil, or if you have a gooseneck kettle, that works just as well. All right, so I'm shooting for 650 grams of water. All right, so I missed a little bit, 659. That's all right. Give your coffee and water a stir. Why did I say stir? And then let it steep for 4 minutes. Alexa, set a timer for 4 minutes.
Second timer, 4 minutes, starting now.
Alexa, stop. All right, so somewhere between 4 and 5 minutes, you're just gonna wanna plunge your French press and do it slowly and consistently. Do the plunge, and then transfer the coffee out of the French press and into either a thermos or your coffee mug, because if you leave it in there, it will continue to extract and get over extracted. And that's all there is to it. The French press is super easy and it makes a great cup of coffee. It's one of my favorite methods to make coffee. It's so repeatable, it's so easy, it's so simple. The only thing that some people complain about is it gives you a little sludgier, a little dirtier cup that the other methods like the paper filters and stuff tend to filter out. But the French press is an incredible method, great way to make coffee. Highly recommend it. We'll see how it turned out. Ah, that's a lovely cup. Okay, there you have it. All right, so we've made it to my favorite method of making coffee, which is the V60. This is a glass V60. This one has a little tab on it that actually stops the flow. This is one optional type of V60 that exists out there. This is the most common type of V60, plastic. But really the biggest thing that you're looking for is these channels like this that help the water flow down. It helps it make just a little faster brew times. This is another V60 that's kind of a wild creation, but this is some product that comes out of China. But oddly enough, when you use this style of V60, it does not leak. You would think that the water would come out the other side of the paper filter. But it doesn't. It just goes straight down, and it's just a crazy, crazy creation. But this is a V60. The carafe beneath is less important. You can put it directly on top of a coffee mug. You can put it directly on top of a thermos if you want. Some are sold as a set, as this one I bought as a set. This is a 700 milliliter. Most of the time people are using the V60 for anywhere from 250 grams up to about 650 grams. So this is they consider this a 2 to 4 cup V60, but they make a little bigger one too, as another option. But my favorite amount to make is 500 grams. So that's what we're going to make today. We're going to make a 500 gram V60. All right, so the first thing you need to know is how much you're going to make so that you can calculate your ratio. The ratio I like on the V60 is 1 to 15.5. That's my favorite ratio. It's a little bit odd. I kind of like it right between 15 and 16. So 500 divided by 15.5 is what we're going to do for the ratio. That means that we need 32 1/3, 32.3 grams of coffee, or somewhere between 32 and 33 grams. This is a fancy barista scale that is out there. This one has a timer on it, but a regular old kitchen scale is just fine. So for 500 grams, we're going to tear out the scale. We're going to measure between 32 and 33 grams of coffee. So I got 32.5, so I'm going to call that good. If you have a grinder, great. If you don't, just use whatever grind size you have. If you do have a grinder, shoot for a medium fine, just a little bit on the fine side of medium. So I've got my ground coffee ready, but don't put it into the V60 just yet. What we need to do is actually pre-soak the filter, and we also need to fold the filter. So this is a number 2 size V60, and it's got a little crease here that is basically like the seam. Just take that and fold it over like that, and then that kind of helps make a better cone. So you've got that crease folded over. You put it into whatever style V60 you're using, and we need to pre-wet this filter. It helps get some of the paper filter taste out. If you have a gooseneck kettle, great. If you don't, something like this works just fine. Just take it right off the boil and pre-wet your filter. I like to hit it all around. And this is also preheating your containers and your cone a little bit as well. So now be sure to throw this hot water out before you put your coffee grounds in. All right, so you've got your filter pre-wet and preheated the carafe or whatever. You've tossed that water out. Now you're ready to add the coffee grounds. At this point, you're welcome to tear out the scale, but we're gonna have to tear it again back to 0. But sometimes I just tear it out just to verify how much coffee came out of my grinder. I've got 32.4, which is exactly what I'm shooting for, but somewhere between 32 and 33 grams for 500 grams of water. Now we're gonna have to tear this out again. Okay, so you've got your coffee in, everything's 0, and we're going to add 500 grams of water to get that 1 to 15.5 ratio. Okay, at this point you need a timer. So some barista scales will have a timer built into them. Otherwise, just use your phone, because we're shooting for a total brew time of 3 to 4 minutes. Really, on a 500 grams of coffee, you want to land 3.5 would be ideal, maybe 4 minutes. But somewhere in there, 3 to 4 minutes. Okay, so when you're ready to start pouring, you're going to want to start the timer. But we've got 32 grams of coffee. For the bloom phase, you want to put 60 to 90 grams of water in and let it rest 30 to 45 seconds. So as soon as you're ready to start pouring, I am shooting for about 70 or so grams of water for the bloom. But you're trying to get all of the grounds wet in order to start that bloom cycle. Okay, so I'm hitting start on the timer right now. And I'm weighing out 70 or so grams of water. Okay, so now if you've got a nice fresh roast, you will see bubbling. That's CO2 coming out of the V60. And I'm waiting about 45 seconds for that full bloom phase. All right, at 45 seconds, you're gonna start slowly pouring in again in circles, like a concentric circle like this. And we're gonna try and hit 300 or so total grams on the scale. At 301 on the scale right now, and then we're gonna let this rest just a little bit longer for the extraction. If your V60 does have one of these flappers, just always leave it open. All right, so at about 1 minute and 30, I'm going to go to 400 grams or milliliters and let it, okay, we're going to let it sit there. And right at the 2-minute mark, you can put the rest of the water in. So we're going to go to 500 grams of water. Now, if you're, there I'm at, I overshot it a little bit, 508. But if you're using a smaller cup, like let's say you're using 200, you're shooting for 250 grams, you're going to need to slow this down a little bit. If you're doing a bigger cup, let's say 650 to 700 grams, then you're going to kind of want to do more or less a continuous pour in order to get that drawdown to come out at around that 4-minute mark. And grind size makes a huge difference. So if it's a super fine grind, it will go way slower. If it's a very coarse grind, it will go way faster. But most commercial grinds are right in that middle range, in that medium grind size, and those are about right for this V60. But if you have a grinder, I like to shoot for just a little bit on the finer side. Okay, so the drawdown is in its final steps right now. Just if you have an eye on it, just kind of keep an eye on it. We're at about 3 minutes and 50 seconds, and it's starting to slow down right now, the drip. So I am really pleased with how the timing came out on this particular brew. But, okay, so then I usually just grab this filter, transfer it over into a bowl or something, and let that cool down. And then as for this, a lot of times I will put this on a smaller bowl and let that cool off a little bit. Transfer the coffee right into a thermos. Sometimes it's interesting to measure how much you got out of that brew. It's really just a quality control just to make sure that everything makes sense. All right, yeah, so that's looking good. We got 434 grams out of a 500 gram brew, which is about what you'd want, what you would expect. Typically, if anything you're brewing, you get 80 to 85% out. So if you're doing a 500 gram brew, you should expect 80 to 85% of that out in the final amount of coffee, because that's how much just kind of stays in the brewing process, in the grounds, and gets stuck in the filter. All right. Can't wait to taste test this guy. That is the V60. This is my most common method of brewing. It's a little bit too much of a hassle for most people, but this produces my favorite ever cup of coffee. Oh, it does not disappoint. That is delicious. All right, happy brewing. Nice. All right, this video is intended to show you how to use a Chemex and a Vandola. I don't own a Vandola, but the Chemex and the Vandola are very similar ways of brewing. The only recommendation I have is for the Chemex, I would use the Chemex filter. For the Vandola, I would use the number 3 size Hario V60. These filters are just a little faster. The Chemex filters are a little thicker and tend to slow down the brew more. But I would not put a V60 in a Chemex largely because of this channel right here. The filter is too flimsy and is likely to fall into that channel and seal it off. But for the Chemex, this is just a square filter, paper filter, and the way that is generally recommended is that you fold all 4 over and you open it up so that the 3 sides are on one side like that, and then this is where you brew your coffee. And then this is the way the factory recommends that you do it in order to create a little more integrity around this spout right here, because you don't want that spout falling in and sealing off the brew. One of the complaints a lot of people have about the Chemex is it's a slower brewer, so you have to grind coarser. Because this paper is so thick, it can stall out the brew. So there's an alternative way to folding these that helps out with that. And that's the way I actually like to brew in my Chemex. So what you do is you take the filter, you open it up with the folded side toward you, and you start making a paper airplane. So there you go. You've got the pointed side toward you, and then you open it up right here, and this is where you brew. And I think it just allows for more airflow. It doesn't seal it off quite as much, and it helps speed up the drawdown time and gets you a little more appropriate brew. Because if it takes too long, if your brew ends up going 6, 7, 8 minutes, you're going to end up over extracting that coffee, and it's going to taste bitter. Okay, but what I do here now with this folded over side, I just try to hit it like right in the center of that spout, so that you're basically, if you twist it this way, there's a really good chance that that's going to fall in the spout. But I like to twist it just like this, so that there's a little more strength there, so that it doesn't fall in. All right, so I'm going to make a 500 gram brew. This is an 8-cup Chemex maker. You can go down as low as 250 grams or less. You can make a really small cup with this, but I really don't recommend getting much more than 650, 700 grams or milliliters. I've tried a liter in here, and it just didn't work out that well. It was just too much coffee, and the drawdown was too long, and the coffee didn't turn out well. So I think anywhere in that 500 to 700 range is a really nice target for this. You can maybe push it up to 800, but that might be pushing it a little much. But for today, I am going to do a 500 gram brew, and I recommend a 1 to 15.5 ratio, 15.5 ratio. So 1 gram of coffee, 15.5 grams of water. So in order to do that math, you take 500 divided by 15.5, and that's going to tell you how much coffee to use for this particular brew. So we come out with about 32.3 grams. So that means that just go anywhere between 32 and 33 grams of coffee, and you should be good at that 1 to 15.5 ratio. I'm using up all this crappy coffee. All right, so you take your measuring device, you turn your scale on, and zero it out. So then we're going to measure out between 32 and 33 grams of coffee. All right, I got 32.6 on my scale, so I think that's plenty good. If you have a grinder, great. If you don't have a grinder, just use whatever grind size you have. I recommend a little on the coarse side, so medium coarse, basically. Not quite a French press, but more than your usual pour over. More coarse than that. Okay, so at this point, don't put the coffee into the Chemex just yet, or the Vandola. What we need to do is pre-soak this filter and preheat the coffee maker itself. So if you have just a normal kettle, that works just fine. Also, if you have a gooseneck, this works really well as well. But just make sure that you have enough hot water ready to go for whatever you're going to brew out. So make sure if you're doing an 800 gram brew, a lot of times that's a stretch for these little gooseneck kettles. But this is a 1 point something liter thing, so there's plenty of hot water in here. Okay, so I'm just going to pre-soak this filter and hit all the sides here. It kind of preheats the brewer as well as like seals the filter down a little bit. Biggest thing is make sure that you're not that the filter is not falling into that channel, because that'll create a suction and it'll stall out the brew. Okay, so this water can just get dumped out into the sink. Okay, so now we're ready to add the coffee because the filter is pre-soaked. All that extra water got dumped out. Just throw your coffee in and create just a little divot in the middle so that it kind of helps that water flow down the center of that brew. Now, zero out the scale, because what we want to measure is just the amount of water that we're adding to this brew. And my target is 500 grams. We're going to do the bloom phase. So we've got about 30 grams of coffee in there, 32 and a half. You can multiply that by 2 to 3 times, and that's your target amount of water to put in for the bloom. So for the first pour, I'm shooting, oh my goodness, that's never happened before. Thank you. I must have filled this thing too much. All right, my kettle is definitely ready to go. Thank you. Yes. Okay, so as soon as you're ready to start pouring, hit the timer button either on your phone or if your scale has one, and let's shoot for about 70 or so grams of water. Oh, that went really fast. But really you want to just make sure that you get all of these grounds saturated and soaking. If you see it bubbling, that's a good thing. That means that you've got a nice fresh roast, and it's good fresh coffee. Okay, so we're going to wait about 45 seconds for the bloom. This is just kind of activating those coffee grounds and releasing some CO2. All right, at 45 seconds, we're going to go up to 300 grams of water. And then just go in like a circular pattern, really just trying to make sure that all of those grounds are getting wet. Once you hit 300, let's just wait another 30 seconds or so. At about a minute 30, I'm going to start again. All right, at a minute 30, we're going to put another 100 grams of water in, and then wait until about 2 minutes. At 2 minutes, then we'll put the final amount in. Take it up to 500. All right, my timer says 2 minutes, so I'm going to put the remaining 100 grams in, just trying to make sure everything is getting wet. Okay, so I hit 505 on the scale. We're good there. And then we wait for the full drawdown. So basically we wait for this to turn from a stream into a drip. For total time, we're shooting for between 3 and 4 minutes of total brew time on a 500 gram brew. That's really good. If you're doing a bigger size, if you get up into that 650, 700 grams, it can be a little longer. You can get out to 5 minutes or so is good. For a smaller brew, for let's say 250 grams of water, you're still going to want to shoot for that 3 to 4 minutes of total brew time, so you're going to have to kind of slow down your pours. All right, it's starting to slow down now, getting through that final drawdown. All right, that's looking pretty good. We're at 3.5 minutes right now, and that's turned into a drip, so I'm really happy with that brew. All right, at about 3 minutes and 45 seconds, I'm going to call it done. So you can just pull that filter out and throw it into a bowl or something. And then I recommend transferring this right into a thermos. I actually preheated this thermos with hot water, so I'm going to dump out that hot water and put the coffee in. All right, sometimes I like to measure too, just to see how much of a total came out, and then that just kind of is like a verification for me that everything makes sense. So it's kind of like a quality control check. So I ended up with 416 grams of water on a 500 gram brew. That's about right. You should end up between 80 and 85% of your total brew. So at 500 grams, if you multiply that by 80 to 85%, that should be about what you should get out in coffee. All right, I'm excited to give this a shot. Oh, not bad. Not bad at all. All right, happy brewing. I love making coffee in the Moka Pot. It's a little bit tricky, and there's a few extra steps involved, so I don't do it every day. It's not my morning cup, but when I'm in the mood, it is so much fun to have a cup from the Moka Pot. There are a few tricks that will improve your cup a lot. Number one, you're shooting for a 1 to 10 ratio with the coffee. So that means we need to know what size moka pot you have. The way that you can do that is put your base on the scale and then put some water in there up to the pressure valve. Don't go over the pressure valve because then it won't work properly. And then remeasure it on the scale. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to zero it out with the base on the scale, and your moka pot might be bigger or smaller. Well, it probably isn't smaller than this. This is it might be bigger than this, but the first thing we want to do is zero it out, add water to your moka pot up until this pressure valve, and then let's reweigh it. I already knew this, but mine is a 250 gram moka pot, or 250 milliliters. So I'm just going to toss this water back out. All right, so now that we know that it's 250 grams of water that fit in here, we can do our 1 to 10 calculation. So you take 250 divided by 10. This is easy math. That's 25 grams. So 25 grams of coffee should fit in your filter basket. They make these things so really that should come out just about right, just about perfect. Your filter basket should be full, and you don't want to tamp these down. This is not an espresso maker. All right, so then the next step is going to be grinding and measuring your coffee. So measure and grind your coffee. So we're going to measure out 25 grams of coffee, and then I'm going to grind it. All right, so I've got my bowl on the scale. I'm going to zero it out. And we're going to measure 25 grams of coffee because there's 250 grams in this moka pot, and that makes it a 1 to 10 ratio. 25.2 is just fine. If you have a grinder, great. Then you can try and grind it pretty fine. A little bit more coarse than espresso, but probably about as fine as your grinder can go, unless you have an espresso grinder, which not everybody does. If you don't have a grinder, that's okay. Just use whatever grind size you have. Okay, so now I'm going to prep my filter basket and put my 25 grams in here. Sometimes I just find something to put this thing in to hold it. Otherwise, yeah, I don't know if that would work or not. But I just basically want to hold this thing upright. We'll see how this goes. All right, I'm going to try and get that down in there. So you don't want to tamp, but you do want it to be level across the top. You don't want this to be pressurized. It's kind of like an espresso shot. You don't want to see channeling in there. You want the puck to pop out, but it's not espresso because it's not under pressure. All right, so that was a little messy, but overall not bad. There are two main tricks to getting a really good cup out of your moka pot. Number one is putting hot water in the base before you put it on the stove. Don't heat the water up in the stove because that ends up cooking the coffee in your little filter basket. Number two is after you have this all on the stove, you've got your hot water in here, you've got your filter basket in there, you've screwed this together. Now when you put this on the stove, what you're going to want to do is just put it on the burner or whatever you have, and then the minute that it starts to percolate out of this, so you do it with the lid open, you actually try to do that as slow as possible. You try to slow down the stream as much as you can. So when it starts flowing, oftentimes what I will do is lift it up. It'll keep flowing a little bit, and then it'll slow down, and then I put it back on the heat, lift it up again, put it back on the heat, lift it up again. And so you try to slow down that as much as possible without a complete stop. You want it to be one continuous heating flow, but as slow as you possibly can. And then the second that starts to pop and gurgle, you take it off heat completely and try and get it as cooled down as quick, because that's where a lot of bitter flavors will come from. So right now I'm going to fill this base with hot boiling water before I move over to the stove to do the rest. All right, I'm gonna measure out 250 grams of water because I know that that is my target to match my 25 grams of coffee. And now you're gonna need some hot pads in order to handle this thing because this thing will get hot. All right, so the hot water's in. Carefully put your coffee in next and then put some hot pads on or something because we're gonna screw the top on. All right, make sure that's nice and tight, but not crazy tight. Now we're gonna move over to the stove. All right, so I'm gonna put this on the burner. I usually go from like about a medium heat. So this is on a number 5. And I'm gonna open that lid and we sit and watch. Now it is just now starting, so I'm gonna lift up a little bit. At the same time, I'm gonna lower the heat. So it's flowing now. And you just kind of want to get this to flow as slowly as possible. But usually once it starts moving, it goes quick. But you just kind of want to make this a constant stream. I must have a really fine grind because it is pushing through really slow, which is what you want. But then the minute that it starts sputtering, you want to take that off of heat. I'm starting to see a little, okay. I'm definitely seeing some sputtering, so I'm going to take this off of heat. I'm going to turn the heat off on the stove, and we're going to see how this turned out. All right, as with anything, it is sometimes nice to measure what your output is. So I'm just going to put it in a coffee cup here, and just out of curiosity, just to see how much we ended up with. All right, so 250 grams of water in. I got 163 grams of water out, which means that there's probably a fair amount of water still down in that base, but I'm gonna see what that math is. Okay, that was 65% of the total water in, so this is gonna be a nice strong drink. Let's find out how it turned out. Not bad. Not bad at all. It's a little on the bitter side for me, which means I probably went too fine on the grounds. I'll back my grinder off just a little bit, but I don't think you'll have that problem. Enjoy. There has been a ton of interest in cold brew. This is my cold brew right here. It is delicious. Oh, this is delicious. I really don't recommend the sit in the refrigerator for 12 or 24 hours. That style of cold brew has never turned out good for me. But this is the other method that I've really adopted that I really like. This is Lance Hedrick's method. It's 80% hot water and 20% ice. So I'm gonna do a 650 milliliter brew. You can do this in a V60, you can do this in a Chemex, in a Vandola. Those are the easiest ones. You can do it in a coffee maker as long as you know exactly how much water you're putting into that coffee maker. But we're gonna do a 650 milliliter. I'm gonna use this Flor de Caña V60 because it's cool. So the first thing, let's figure out our numbers. The ratio that I recommend is a 1 to 15 for this. So if we're doing a total of 650 milliliter brew, divide that by 15, that is 43.3 grams of coffee. But you know what? It really does help to just like grab a Post-it note or something, some little piece of scratch paper, and let's write these numbers down so that we don't get confused. It can be very easy to do. So I'm gonna put up here at the top, 650 milliliters, 43 1/3 grams of coffee. So somewhere between 43 and 44 grams is fine, anywhere in there. That's our total brew. Now let's figure out how much hot and how much ice. So 650 times 0.8, 80% hot. That is 520 milliliters hot. And 650 times 0.2 is 130 milliliters ice. The ice comes later. So what we're going to do is we're going to brew the hot down, and then we're going to stir in the ice, and that kind of flash chills it. All right, so we got all that ready. Let's measure out our coffee. All right, so put your bowl on there. Zero out your scale. Somewhere between 43 and 44 grams of coffee for a 1 to 15 ratio, and that's on a 650 milliliter brew. 43.6. Love it. Shoot for a medium grind, medium fine, just a little on the fine side. All right, so I've got my coffee ready to go, but don't put it in your V60 or anything yet because we need to pre-rinse the filter. So with number 2 size V60, make sure you fold over that seam and then pop it in your V60. Now I am just going to run this under the sink, just under cold water. We don't need to preheat the receptacle or anything because this is a cold brew. All right, so the filter is rinsed. We're ready to add our coffee. There's nothing in here. We don't need to preheat anything. You can kind of level that bed out and put a little divot in the center just to help that water go down. Zero out your scale. All right, I forgot to preheat my water, so let's get the ice prepped. So I'm going to set this aside for now, and just grab a receptacle or something just to get a whole bunch of ice and another bowl because we need to measure out 130 grams of ice. All right, so I just grabbed a whole bunch of ice here so that you can kind of play around with the different sizes and stuff. Grab the bowl that you're going to measure your ice in, zero out your scale, and let's figure out how much is 130 grams of ice. We're at 135, so maybe if we can play around with that just a little bit. I think there we're at 131.7, 132, so that's just fine. That's close enough. The bigger the chunks of ice that you can come up with, the better, because we want that to really flash cool your coffee. So I'm going to set that aside, and then the water is almost boiling and ready to go. All right, you can just take your water right off the boil. That is just fine. Let's just take a quick look at your numbers again. Remember, we're doing a total brew of 650 milliliters, but only 520 of that is hot. So right here, our goal is to hit 520 milliliters, but we're going to do a bloom. So zero out your scale and put in about 100. Oh, start your timer. Sorry, I have a timer on my scale. If you don't have a timer, use your phone. Shooting for 100 grams of water just for the bloom phase. Really the goal here is just to get all of your grounds saturated and start activating that CO2. All right, so at 1 minute, let's take it up to 350 grams of water. And remember just to pour in concentric circles. There we're at 354, and then we'll wait till about 1:45. At 1:45, let's just take it up to about 450 or so. Really just making sure that you're getting all the grounds wet. Shooting for a total brew time of between 3 and 4 minutes. All right, we are at 2 minutes and 10 seconds. I'm going to do the rest. So I'm going to take it all the way up to 520. All right, there is 525. I overshot it just a little bit. But now that's it for the hot. We've got our ice prepped and ready to go. When this is done, we'll stir that in right away. All right, so it is now dripping. It's slowing down quite a bit. We're at about 3 minutes and 30 seconds, so I'm really pleased with how that turned out on time. Now we can just kind of get rid of this filter paper. Set this aside. I'm just going to throw this into a spare bowl. Move the V60 off onto something else. Then we're going to stir in our ice. I like to zero out the scale here just to double check. We're shooting for 130 grams of ice. And really vigorously stir that in. We're trying to flash cool this. And then a little bit of that ice melted. Okay, so we're at 130 grams, which is perfect. I'm going to continue stirring this vigorously until that ice is gone. And until this is completely cool to the touch, which it is already getting there. The ice is completely stirred in. This is now cold or lukewarm. And we're ready for a glass. All right, use a generous amount of ice before you pour this coffee in. And if you want to be super fancy, you can pre-chill your glasses so that you're not losing any heat to the glass, or vice versa. All right, let's see how this turned out. Salud. That is not bad at all. That's good. That's very good, actually. Oh, that's delicious. All right, with the rest of this, you can just put it into a thermos, put it into the fridge. It'll last for about a day or two. No. This is like after all of the methods of preparation. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you're willing to play around with some of these other methods of preparation. They're so much fun. The world of coffee is so huge, and the rabbit hole is so deep. But when you're just starting out, remember, just make friends with that kitchen scale. This is your #1 tool to figure out how to make better coffee. Enjoy and happy brewing. That one was good.